Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge, text number 33. Shrayan Dravyamaya Yagyaj Yana Jagna Parantapa Sarva Karma Kilam Parata Jnani Parisamapyate Shrayan Dravyamaya Yagnaj Yana Jagna Parantapa Jnana Sarvakara Kalam Parata Jnani Parisamapyate Mataji.
Shreyam Dravyama Yagyai Yana Yagna Para Tapa Sarvam Karma Kilam Parta Yani Parisamapyate
Yani Parisamapyate Shreyan greater Dravyamayat of material possessions Yagyat then the sacrifice Yana Yagya sacrifice in knowledge Parantapa O chastiser of the enemy Sarvam all Karma activities Akilam in totality Partha O son of Prita Jnane in knowledge Parisamapyate end. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. O chastisers of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the merest sacrifice of material possessions. After all, O son of Prita, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. Please repeat, O chastisers of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the merest sacrifice of material possessions. After all, O son of Prita, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. Purport. The purpose of all sacrifices is to arrive at the status of complete knowledge, then to gain release from material miseries, and ultimately to engage in the loving service, transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, Lord Krishna consciousness. Nonetheless, there is a mystery about all these different activities of sacrifice. Once you know this mystery, sacrifices sometimes take different forms according to the particular faith of the performer. Once faith reaches the stage of transcendental knowledge, the performer's sacrifice should be considered more advanced than those who simply sacrifice material possessions without such knowledge. Without attainment of knowledge, sacrifices remain on the material platform and bestow no spiritual benefit. Real knowledge culminates in Krishna consciousness, the highest state of transcendental knowledge. Without the elevation of knowledge, sacrifices are simply material activities. When, however, they are elevated to the level of transcendental knowledge, all such activities enter onto the spiritual platform. Depending on differences in consciousness, sacrificial activities are sometimes called karma kanda, friv activities, and sometimes jnana kanda, knowledge in the pursuit of truth. It's better when the end is knowledge. Shreyan swadamo viguna paradharma sunustitat shreyadarme Shreyang dravayamaya jagnat jnana jagna parantapa sarvan karmikalam partha jnani parisamapyate. O chasters of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the merest sacrifice of material possessions. After all, son of Pritha, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. Namo Vishnu Vraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutaya Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamane Namaste Saraswatunde Ve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Srinivadi Paskatyade Satarane. Srila Prabhupada said that our philosophy is the most voluminous, consisting, and exacting due to the unbreakable system of disciple succession. So similarly, Bhagavad Gita has a very consistent philosophy. If one knows Sanskrit, it's probably easier to see the consistency of our philosophy. In any case, here it talks about different types of knowledge and different types of sacrifice. In the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna will tell us, Chatur vida bhajante mam janasakritina arjuna arta jignasya artarati jnani parisamarpite. That actually, Chatur vida, Chatur vanyamaya shristam, he's already said that. Chatur vanyamaya shristam guna karma vivagajaha tasya kartaram apimam viti kartaram avyam. That according to the 3 modes of material nature and the work prescribed to them, this corresponding 4 divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I'm not yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So we all have a body, and each one of our bodies are different combinations of the modes of material nature that we're conditioned by. Because we're all transcendental spiritual beings, therefore whatever our conditioning is, it doesn't affect the soul, but it affects the soul's awareness. And therefore it affects the soul's determination of what he wants in the future. But then Krishna also says, Chatura Vayamaya Shrisam, Chatura Vida Bhajante Mam, that's all right, is that right? Chatura Vida Bhajante Mam Janaskartani, Artha Janasi Artaraki, Yani Chapartarshva, that 4 kinds of pious people render service to me. Those who are in distress, those who want some material comfort or material resources, and those who are inquisitive, and he who is searching for knowledge of the absolute truth. So these are considered pious. And what's these sacrifices that have been described previously, that we've heard about, they're all pious activities. In other words, Krishna has given different ways that people can utilize their energies in order to engage in his service in some way or another. Basically speaking, some of the sacrifices are just meant to control the mind and senses. Some of them are meant to engage in some kind of offering to Vishnu. But as a matter of fact, all the different Vedic sacrifices that are mentioned, they always begin with Om. They're always directed as a sacrifice for Vishnu, ultimately. But when someone sacrifices for Vishnu, but his determination is to end his suffering, then it's considered that the sacrifice has some material benefit, namely to end suffering. In other words, those who are Shudras, in the bodily concept of life, they render service with motivation, and their motivation is to get rid of their suffering. Suffering is generally caused by sinful activities, and the main sinful activities are illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling. So when one becomes dutiful and as a Shudra, renders service for the highest section of society, or even in this age, chanting Hare Krishna to get free from distress, because that's the sacrifice in this age. Previously, the Shudras would have to assist the Vaishyas or the Brahmins or the Kshatriyas, and the whole assistance was there would be a perform of sacrifices for Vishnu, Agnihotra sacrifice or Ashvamedha sacrifice, some kind of sacrifice. And then everyone would enjoy the benefits because the atmosphere would become spiritual highs by such a sacrifice. But that's not happening in this age. This age, whether you're a Shudra, whether you're in the mode of goodness or in the mode of passion, in the mode of ignorance, the sacrifice in this age is chanting Hare Krishna. But those who perform the sacrifice of chanting Hare Krishna may have different motives for doing so. As a matter of fact, in the previous Kali Yugas, if you're interested to know who the incarnation was, it wasn't Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He only comes in once in a day of Brahma. So the question is, who was the previous Leela avatars in Kali? Who are the previous Yuga avatars? In Satya Yuga, does anyone know who the Yuga avatar is in Satya Yuga? He comes in a what's a meditation? He comes in a whitish form as an incarnation. He's in the Bhagavatam. His name begins with a K. Yeah, Kapila Dev. He teaches meditation. And in Treta Yuga, he comes with a ladle, and he's a reddish color. His name is Yagya, the incarnation. And in Treta Yuga, he comes in a form that he's worshipped as a deity. Who's that? Treta. No, he's not. He's a Leela avatar. Actually, I'm talking about Dwarka Yuga. He comes deity worship. He came in a black. I guess Krishna is the Yuga avatar for it. Because in that age, it's deity worship. I don't know who else would be the worship of deity. And in this age, he usually comes in a blackish form. And they perform Sankirtan, the chanting of Hare Krishna. But there's no Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the previous ages. So they usually perform Sankirtan, and the result is they get rain and food and all the other things in Kali Yuga. But I guess the highest they can get is liberation, or maybe go to Vaikuntha. But it's not Goloka Vrindavan. So in this age with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's, one can simply chant Hare Krishna, and that's the Yuga Dharma. But people do that for desires. If one is desiring to get free from distress, then by the chanting one becomes free from distress to some degree or another. And we can see that devotees come, they chant Hare Krishna, they get a little free from distress, or it's probably writes in the Bhagavad Gita. They get a little bit of money, and they become economically well off, and then they leave the movement because they got what they wanted. Until Kali Yuga, they get the results of Kali Yuga, and then they may come back again sometime in this lifetime or in the future. Others, they come because they learn how to sell paintings or something. They couldn't do anything before they joined the movement. They learned how to sell paintings or candles or even books or something. They learn the technique of making money. They get a little purified, come to a little bit to the mode of passion, and then they leave the movement. They start their own business. Or they start their own movement. Others, they're interested in knowledge. They become inquisitive. So here it says, such devotees are better looking for knowledge and simply trying to get free from distress or getting a little economically well off by the chanting of Hare Krishna. But that knowledge is really, how to live in the material world, or how to organize society, how to become a little bit, a manager or a controller or whatever. Learn how to control your family, at least. So the devotees do that, and they get some knowledge. They get the knowledge, of course, was we're not this body. It's not some kind of other kind of knowledge. The real knowledge is we're eternal, we're spiritual beings, and that the goal of life is to realize our actual self. So sometimes devotees take the knowledge. They want to get free from distress of material bodily identification. They may even rise up to the more or less some liberation onto the mode of goodness platform. But they don't really want to go further. They have a nice family. They even sit together. They read the books together. They go to Bhakti Shastri course and Bhakti Vaibhava. But basically speaking, they don't really have an interest in getting liberated from the material world, going back to the spiritual world. It's not such a bad life here. Besides that, you can go to the heavenly planets. You may get even a better situation in the next lifetime. Who wouldn't want to go and see what Indraloka looks like? So they gain knowledge, they understand that they're not their body, they live according to that to a certain extent, but they're not interested in going back to Godhead. Still, knowing that they're not their body, that gradually they develop faith in the Vedic culture and the Vedic wisdom, and therefore they may get some taste in the future of something transcendental. You may develop in the course of time some transcendental knowledge. Because the mode of goodness is like the starting point before you can actually pay attention to the holy name and be receptive to it. Only in the mode of goodness, when one is free from all these unnecessary desires for making ourselves safe or comfortable, because that's the material world. Either we want our bodies to be safe, we want them to be comfortable. So when we get free from those two desires, then we can relax a little bit and actually become receptive to the holy name, to the process of devotional service. So that's knowledge. Not learning millions of slokas or becoming a big debater. No, it's accepting Krishna and try to feel his presence and love him and serve him out of devotion and love. Therefore it says it's better, knowledge. And then we'll explain the next verse, of course, the famous verse, Tadvidi pranipatena, pariprishnena sevaya, buddhekshantite jnanam, jnanena tattvadarshana. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master, inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they've seen the truth. And therefore, the process of getting transcendental knowledge is the process of accepting a bona fide spiritual master, taking initiation, and following the process. So that's what's really recommended, not just on your own, just getting a book and reading it. One will not get transcendental knowledge in that way, very easily at least. The process is given by Krishna as submission, service, and inquiry under the guidance of Krishna and his representatives. Otherwise, one may perform so many other kinds of sacrifices. Sacrifice by giving in charity, sacrifice by opening dharma shalas, or by sacrifice by pranayama. But these are considered to be within the realm of karma kanda. Jnana kanda is also sacrifice of knowledge, but that culminates in transcendental knowledge, which Krishna will explain in the next verse. To submission, service, inquiries, and as Prabhupada says that satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master is the secret of advancement in spiritual life. That one should not only hear submissively, but one should get a clear understanding through submission, service, and inquiries. The self-realized, one has to pass the test of the spiritual master. When the spiritual master sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. In this verse, both blind following and absurd inquiries and condemned. One should not only hear submissively, but one should get a clear understanding through submission, service, and inquiries. The self-realized spiritual master is by nature very kind to the disciple. When the disciple is always submissive, ready to render service, then the reciprocation of knowledge and inquiries becomes perfect. Anyhow, Hare Krishna. Any questions? Yes.
Krishna, because you mentioned this purport, and it says there satisfaction of the self-realized spiritual master. So, who is the self-realized spiritual master? Srila Prabhupada or our spiritual masters? Or?
Well, there may be different degrees of self-realization. As Prabhupada said, as Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj writes in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, text number 147, under the spiritual masters. Shiksha Guru Ke Ta Ejani Krishna Swarup Antaryami Bhakta Shrestha Seduri Rup. That Shiksha Guru comes in two types. Antaryami, the super soul, and the Bhakta Shrestha, the best of the devotees. Prabhupada says there are two ways of understanding spiritual knowledge. One is objectively and the other is subjectively. So objectively means that the person is situated in transcendence. He's fully self-realized. He sees when he chants Hare Krishna, Krishna is present before him in his original transcendental form, along with his name, with all his associates. He's living in Goloka Vrindavan. Then we have the others who may be on different degrees, from Shraddha to Prema, or Shraddha to Bhava at least, all the way up to a Shakti, where they're constantly remembering Krishna's pastimes. But they're not on the Uttamadhikari platform yet, but they're just on the threshold. Or they may even be on the Uttamadhikari platform. They may be on the Bhava Bhakti platform, or even Prema. But they have realization of Krishna consciousness. They know the path. It may not be fully experienced or realized, but they may know the path. The minimum that one should be, at least as initiating guru, is that they should be at least on a steady platform. Which means they're convinced about Krishna consciousness, as Prabhupada writes in Eligibility, the 3rd chapter in Nectar of Devotion. They're convinced about, and they can convince others about Krishna consciousness. And basically speaking, they've been trained up by a spiritual master, and they can present, and therefore they're eligible to become spiritual masters. There's many qualities that Prabhupada writes about for eligibility, which is more or less on the platform of the 4 Kumaras, perfect Brahman. They're the ones who are used in that chapter as the example of those who are the most eligible to take up pure devotional service. They more or less conquered sinful reactions, for instance, as it says that first one on the beginning platform, the Karmakanda platform, when it gives up sinful activities. Then the next platform, one accepts pious activities, is 927. Yeshamandagatam papam janam punya karmanam. Then they conquer sinful reactions, which means that more or less they're aloof from the things that draw their minds away from Krishna. They're able to think about Krishna and not get so much caught up in other things. Then when they conquer, then they can actually accept devotional service. And from there they can understand, gain positive knowledge of Krishna. They actually experience Krishna consciousness. And then from there, they come to the platform of meditating in trance upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the topmost devotee is meditating in trance on the topmost on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And others may be on different levels of that. But if they're higher than we are, then they can help us come at least to their level of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, everyone is eligible to come, either initiating guru or a shiksha guru. but there still should be understood to be on the relative platform of Krishna consciousness. Now, Prabhupada writes that the Uttamadhikari, the topmost devotee, the Bhakti Shrestha, he sees everything objectively, but others may think see things according to their how much they've steadily and how much enthusiastically they're engaged in devotional service. Now, then Prabhupada writes, the Acharya in the true sense of the term who is authorized to deliver Krishna enriches the devotee with full transcendental knowledge and thus awakens him to the activities of devotional service. So, if you're not on the platform, if one is not on the platform of Uttamadhikari, or even if he is, still, in our system, we connect one with the previous Acharya, or the previous Acharyas. So Prabhupada never presented himself taking the position as a Madhyama Adhikari, because the preacher has to be on the Madhyama Adhikari platform, that he was a self-realized soul. He generally didn't present himself like that. He presented himself that he was presenting the realizations of the previous Acharyas. But of course, because he's our founder Acharya, therefore we take him as Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in the fifth, Prabhupada points out in the fifth verse of the Nectar of Instruction, that one can understand an Uttamadhikari by his ability to convert others to become Vaishnavas. So because of Prabhupada's amazing display of Krishna Shakti, which means that he must be empowered by Krishna to do it, converting so many people from all over the world to take up the process of devotional service. Therefore, he's accepted as an Uttamadhikari. Without that Shakti, he wouldn't be able to do it. And that Shakti means that Krishna was present when he was distributing Krishna consciousness. So others may not be on that platform, but still, they're acting as an instrument for Krishna. And therefore, if they say something, they give us some realization, and that realization ultimately includes the fact that we were in a ISKCON, which Prabhupada is the founder Acharya, and everything we're doing, everything we're saying, everything we're thinking about should be in line with Prabhupada's teachings and example. So if they're doing that, then they're acting as an instrument for Krishna and for Prabhupada and the previous Acharyas. Therefore, there's no competition. It's not like they're considered to be mediums to different degrees of the previous Acharyas, and they're not the little tiny soul within the body. It's not the doer. It's Krishna who's the doer. Therefore, what we're seeing, every devotee, to one degree or another, is under the spiritual energy, and therefore they should be respected in different ways. But those who are superior to us by realization, their instructions should be accepted and followed, and their example should be followed, as much as their example as manifesting an example following the previous Acharya and Acharyas, as much as their understanding Krishna consciousness, they should be accepted and followed. And those who are on the same level, they should be offered respect, and one should help each other to improve and stay steady on the path of devotional service. And for those who are inferior, then we try to educate them by our example, our own example, and by our instructions, how to encourage them to take up the path of devotional service and advance in Krishna consciousness. So in terms of your question, Prabhupada, as the founder Acharya, is the basis for everyone's activities within our society. Everyone's preaching. He has to be the standard, and therefore there's no competition. And one who comes to the platform that Prabhupada's on, then still they're servants of Prabhupada, because in the spiritual world everyone is servant of each other. There's no question of becoming anything else other than a servant of the servants. It's not that when you get a certain level of advancement, you become something other than the servant of the servants. And so in the etiquette and our external activities that we follow, the Prabhupada is the founder Acharya, so everyone's his servant. And as much as they become his servant, then they can hear what he's saying, what he's chanting, his instructions, what he's doing, they can understand it. And therefore they come to the level of Krishna consciousness, and Krishna reveals himself to them also. Does that make sense? Anything else? Hwala Grantaraj Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Premanande.